Day 984 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 699,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,410 in the past day. Then as for hardware losses, 12 tanks, 36 APVs and 10 artillery. Then headed straight to the map today, into Russia, and like something out of a comedy film, as reportedly a very lucky and unharmed Russian trainee here, not knowing what he was doing with the electrical components of the substation, had ended up in part blowing up the substation, causing a blackout in the city of Surzan. Now, this incident was said to happen about a week ago, but we only more recently have now received the upload showing the actions of this Russian Mr. Bean. Then headed to Stavropol in Russia, as earlier and leading into the weekend, a Russian drone strike targeted an oil depot. The attack focused on a fuel storage facility in Svetlograd, igniting the depot and creating a scene of intense flames. Also note, in the video, X marks the spot with the oil depot cope cage prioritized installation, helping to sufficiently mark the tanks of interest, but not helpful enough to deter a successful strike. Then overnight, still within Russia, in the Bashkortostan region, as 22 wagons loaded with coal derailed. No one was hurt, the cause is unknown, and yet it's difficult to even speculate on the cause because there is at least a few options available here. Take for instance, it could have been as a result of Ukrainian targeting, or it could have been through angry local partisans, of which there are many in Bashkortostan, given the way the country has stripped the Russian Republic of their wealth to help fund the war. But also, it could have been simply the fact that the Russian rail network is facing significant issues due to a whole combination of factors now, including Western sanctions severely impacting the availability of imported high-quality parts like the cassette bearings and electronic components essential for maintaining locomotives. Russia had taken the third-party supply route on that front. Oh, plus, we've also seen Russian rail decline this year more than any other year, leading to the prioritization of operational locomotives for use with SMO needs over that of the needs of the actual wider Russian economy. The rabbit hole goes much deeper than this, but suffice it to say, the future outlook doesn't look that promising for the largest rail network on the planet. Then on the map, headed to not quite Ukraine, but indeed a location where Ukrainian servicemen are active, with some new information on the North Korean threat. Now, it's difficult to confirm, but it appears some North Koreans have been already found in Russian battle with their Pyongyang-issued identity documents. Evidence like this grows every day, though, much like the scientific community in this respect, sometimes nothing is ever considered fact until there is an overwhelming body of evidence to support it. So, given that the Kremlin appears to be more and more leaning in the direction of denial of Koreans in Kursk, then we all just look to the continued mounting evidence, which, let's be honest, the Kremlin would probably deny anyway. Now, there's also been fresh new reports of North Korean soldiers taking on Russian friendly fire in the Russian artillerists' attempts to shell the Ukrainian army. This was just recently reported by a South Korean news outlet. And for what might seem shocking and unlikely, has already been reported to have occurred many times in the Donbass, with the Russian artillerists performing friendly fire on their own infantry wave attacks. Their own Russian infantry. So it certainly gives a new dimension to scorched earth tactics. But then also in Kursk, most recently, more Russians looting, well, other Russians, inside of Russia, as another house in Korenovo was liberated by Russian troops of household items, including TVs, computers, tools, and even some furniture. The angry Russian resident shows some of the vacating Russian leftovers, including a Russian chevron patch and Russian MRE packages. Intriguingly enough, this angry local resident had already expected the Russian army thievery, leading them to secure the home prior, and even put up a sign saying everything's already been snatched. Though, clearly, as we can see here, not a strong enough deterrent for the very well motivated Russian troops, where they look to get from this war the loot that they came for. Ah, Russian priorities. Then also for this region, and in an unusual twist of events, where Russian soldiers are no longer just making appeals from horrid conditions they face in Ukraine, but as it now turns out, Kursk as well. With this recently released footage dating back to later last month, where we see that Russian soldiers state that due to a shortage of small aerial reconnaissance vehicles, the unmanned UAVs, many of these guys were sent in as ground recon groups as a means to discover the enemy, which, as they say, led to the demise of many. In this case, a group of men from their 810th Marine Brigade, the very Russian embattled 810th, were ordered to attack head-on against machine gun positions, where they say they were, quote, sent into slaughter, causing for the making of this video appeal, likely seeking help from someone, it's not clear who, but perhaps Putin himself. So as you can see here, the Russian MOD's complete regard for the life of their soldiers obviously extends into their own borders as well, and not just internationally. Oh, then also, there's no shortage of information coming out of Kursk at the moment. Because, take a look at this, Russia brought in the incredible, the indelible, the unstoppable, the Steven Seagal into the Oblast? Now, just prior to this, about a week ago, the former actor did make a very public request to Putin asking to go to the SMO. So this should amount to at least his first stop as he performs this PR campaign in the region. Though I find it highly unlikely that he'll be taking up arms. This now Russian citizen that has been living in the country since 2016. I'd maybe call him a bit of a sellout, but nobody was really that fond of him for the last 2 or 3 decades anyway. Then we'll head out of the Kursk People's Republic and we'll move to Ukraine, as for instance, Ukraine's 10th Mountain Assault Brigade showed a large, for the area, Russian mechanized assault towards Vyimka, north of Bakhmut today, with numerous destroyed Russian vehicles. So the enemy used 22 units of armoured vehicles including 7 tanks, 13 BMPs and a small inclusion of 2 MTLBs, plus 120 infantry for the assault operations. However, through the AFU's coordinated efforts in utilising ATGMs, reconnaissance and drones, the approach of the enemy was detected in time and Russian assault groups were stopped on their approach. In all, Russia was dealt the loss of 6 tanks, 9 BMPs and about 60 personnel losses, including the wounded. Then headed further down on the map in the Donbass, where Russian forces continued their marginal advances around Kurakova, be it in the north, that is the northeast and the south, amid their continued offensive operations in the Kharkova direction. Although anything north of this front, be it in the Pokrovsk direction, even from Seladova's vantage point, has remained unchanged since last Friday. So it is possible that the Russian MOD has since placed a stronger emphasis on Kurakova now, which would mean that their brute force tactics would need to have a particular focus in coming from the south and southeast, given their more limited access from the north due to the quite large reservoir. Then taking a look around on the map, and just briefly for somewhere in the east today, we saw the AFU's 35th Marine Brigade capture a Russian T-72 tank in the eastern direction. The abandoned Russian tank was within safe retrieval proximity of the Ukrainian positions. Otherwise, it would have been targeted for termination. Then also, somewhere in the east, we saw a destroyed Russian 122mm MLRS, the BM-21 Grad, the smaller Russian-operated multiple-launch rocket system. Now, the range of these systems vary, but typically varies between 20 to 30 kilometers depending on the type of rocket used, unguided rocket. But unlike a tank, an SPG, or an infantry fighting vehicle, they lack any sort of armoured protection, ergo, their best protection comes from the distance they're located from the front lines. which is something that now has a closing gap given the technological innovations of the Ukrainian frontline FPV drone warfare. Longer range drones, essentially. Then we'll head across to some news for today, as here we see the Russian military show how they clean rusted old 82mm mortar shells, the ones handed over to them by North Korea, with many reports now suggesting that about half of the shells that Russia uses in this war against Ukraine are from North Korea as of 2024. What a reliance that has turned out to be. But let's take a look at these ones, shall we? That's not so bad, right? Dealing with the influxes of some older shells. Well, that might have been the case, but according to these guys, only one shell out of every 5 actually fires. Which means, I think I can say it a second time, what a reliance that has turned out to be. Then headed to some Russian economy news, and to a newly emerging type of Russian appeal based on the economy, as workers at the Perm powder plant in Russia, which is an industrial facility known for producing various types of propellants and detonating materials, say they've been pushed to their limits, forced to work an extra 4 hours per day, and now without a single day off. So in this video appeal, they shared that management demands the extra shifts and without extra pay. Also, based on their understanding, it seems management has blamed the problem on the needs of Iran. That management communicated that excuse to the workers, that they then repeated here. Which, by the way, is classic Russian blame shifting or deflection, because the root of the problem is well and truly the Ukrainian invasion. The SMO, leading to sanctions, leading to manpower shortages, leading Russia to treat their dwindling workforce like from that of the old Soviet war times. So this forced labor exploitation, while it doesn't yet meet the strict definition of slavery, the economic problems that Russia faces will perceivably keep heading in this direction. That is until the local population snaps out of it and holds the real Kremlin gremlin at the source of their problems accountable. Then headed across to a super quick funny to round it all off for today, guys, as a Russian woman posted a video where she suspects the Lada car she just purchased is produced in China. Now, first of all, the reason why some Russians even have to question this in the first place is due to how the long-time Russian automotive manufacturers outright lie these days, labeling their rebadged imports, their Chinese imports, as 100% Russian-made. So then Svetlana over here, probably not her real name, she quickly points out all of the broken Russian language on the display screen, accusing Lada of not being honest about who's really building their cars in 2024. So in taking a look, she sees unknown broken translations. One unknown broken translation, for instance, gives the option to show torso. Ironically, show torso earlier in the SMO was something that was required in order for a Russian to claim a free Lada car in the event that members of their immediate family who went off to the SMO never came back from the SMO. But the Russian MOD long since discovered that they can't at all afford that many Lada cars in their budget. Quite frankly, they can't afford a lot anymore. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for the support, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!